Welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Jake Ray, the Youth and Education Manager here at the most inspiring place on earth. You got it right, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I know it's noon. I know it's March. I know games are right about to start. But if you can take it out 45 minutes to an hour out of your day, you'll get to see the end of these first few games once we're done. But we hope you're able to tune in and watch a little bit of our Before the Snap program today. If this is your first time watching, we first want to thank you for tuning in. You guys are going to learn a little bit about what it is that it takes to be and have a career in and around the NFL. There are so many different careers out there, and we're just going to focus on one of the hundreds and thousands of careers that are out there in and around the NFL today. If you're a returner, thank you so much for tuning back in. You guys are in store for another great and excellent program today. A little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame before we dive into our topic today. Our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. Not only do those values make our Hall of Famers great players on the field, great employees in the front office, but they make them great people. And you're going to see today how these values play into, being a good employee, being a great member of a team, member of an organization. And it's so cool to see that, pretty much every answer that's going to be heard today, you're going to hear one of these key values. And it just goes to show how important they are in everyday life, just as important as they are, if not more important, in the game of football as well. Before we do get started, I do want to got some few thank yous I'd like to pass out. First off, our special guest today, Austin Pasco. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. You'll hear it many times that, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today without our Hall of Famers. And that's true for anybody who works in and around the NFL as well. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and taking time out of and everything that you do for the game of football and indirectly for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators, educators, professors, anybody who allowed us to come into your classroom today to teach your students a little bit about what it takes to have a career in and around the NFL. And then lastly, I got to thank our students. Without you guys today, this program doesn't take place. If you watched us before, that we like to take your questions from Facebook. And the only way we can ask those questions, if you guys give them to us to ask. So I do ask, if you do have a question, put your name, your school you go to, and your question in the comment section. And Nathan, he's out there watching that live stream, trying to get these questions in as part of the program. But just like we saw at every program, let us know where you're watching from. Throw your mascot, what school you're from. Let us know where you're watching. We're hopefully reaching schools all across the country today. So that's enough for me. Now let's learn a little bit about our special guest today. Today, we are lucky and grateful to be joined by Austin Pasco. Austin is the youth programs manager for the New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Pelicans. So we got a really cool dynamic we're going to be able to talk about today. He graduated in 2014 from the University of West Georgia with a degree in sport management and a marketing minor. After interning with Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback, our own Jim Kelly, his career in sports was ignited, and shortly after, he secured an internship with the Atlanta Hawks in their youth basketball department. He continued his career in many areas of the sports industry and found his passion for community outreach and youth football programs during an internship with the Atlanta Falcons. Austin has also worked in the player engagement department with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, events promotions with Atlanta's sports talk radio station 92.9 The Game, events with Octagon Marketing, and community relations and foundation with the Atlanta Braves. He's done a lot, and we're going to hear all about those great roles today. And he has been in his current role with the Saints and the Pelicans since 2018. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Austin Pasco. Austin, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Jake, Nathan, thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful intro. And thank you guys, too, for watching me today. Like Jake said, you guys be watching basketball right now, but I appreciate you taking time and learning a little bit more about my career and my journey through the NFL and through other areas as well. As Jake said, before I actually went to the University of West Georgia, I actually went to Mars Hill College, where I had a football scholarship. But I got hurt, so I transferred home, went to the University of West Georgia, got a degree in sports management. Really didn't know what it was at first. I thought I was going to be a Jerry Maguire and be a sports agent or anything else. Didn't know that there was a lot of passion that you could do. There's a lot of different areas that you could do. But I graduated. I ended up doing an internship, like Jake said, with the Atlanta Hawks in their youth programs department and marketing. From there, we were a team of 1 of 4. I was one of for to be asked to come back and actually do part-time work. From there, I networked. That's really what this industry is about, networking. I ended up getting a job with 92.9 The Game, which is their radio station. And then also too, I also got a job with Octagon Marketing just by networking by somebody else in the Hawks organization that previously worked there on their BMW account. And it got to travel to 7 to 8 different cities within a year, putting up their ultimate driving experience. A lot of great memories through that. But I knew that I wanted to be back in the sports ultimately. So the Atlanta Falcons were hiring. Yes, I did work there, believe it or not, even though I'm at the Saints now. But I worked at the Atlanta Falcons in their community relations and youth programs department. And it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, look, I remember my very first day, our director at the time, he looked at my resume. He was like, you got an impressive resume. Like, but you think you know something, you really don't. And man, was he right. Like, I didn't know a lot. And he also told me, you know, whenever you're here, if you're not drinking from a fire hydrant, you're probably not doing your job right. So, and that was very true because it was one of those things where we were doing moms clinics. I was having to order catering for that, having to do a social media posts, reaching out to different high school coaches. It was a lot of different things all at once that I had no idea that really went into, you know, trying to make youth football a very empowerment thing in the city of Atlanta. But from there, I wasn't done. I went back to a short little stay with Octagon Marketing, did a little bit of a resort driving tour. While I was in Hilton Head, South Carolina, I saw that the Atlanta Braves were hiring, ended up working their youth baseball department and in their foundation work. And that was a different area that I had never really seen because I'd never done real true foundation work. So did ticket donations, in-kind donations, autographs, all those great things while still teaching the game of baseball to kids because it's still a dying sport, but you're trying to get as many kids involved into the sport at the time. And so from there, my time was coming to an end. I ended up getting an internship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their player engagement department. So this is the other side of the business. It's actually the football side. Primarily focus was rookies. So teaching them the rookie symposium, like what is it going from college to the NFL to different things that could potentially happen to them. It was a great opportunity seeing the other side of it. My time was up with them, ended up moving back to Atlanta, was still volunteering with the Atlanta Falcons and their youth programs department still on game days. And then even from there, I was working Braves retail. I even went back to the Braves and worked in their retail department, still trying to find my way in because I didn't want to give up. And then finally, I was blessed. It was a crazy story, but I was working the Saints Falcons game in Atlanta and I saw my job posted. And I go up to my supervisor, who was my supervisor whenever I was an intern, and I said, "What do you think about this? This is a manager role. Like I've only done internships. I've never been a coordinator." She was like, "No, you need to apply." I applied. I left a little bit early. I wanted to stay for the end of the game, but I left a little bit early. Applied for the job, and sure enough, the very next day, our VP actually called me, had a 45-minute on-the-spot interview. And I was actually getting to go into the gym. And I just stopped what I was doing, had that interview. And then at the very end, he hit me with a hard-hitting question. "Who were you cheering for yesterday, Saints or Falcons?" And I'm like, oh, I don't want to burn my relationship with the Falcons, but I do want to get a job with the Saints. So I said, "Man, I'm cheering for the game of football. Like, I love football. Like, that's what I'm all about." He said, "That was the right answer." I was like, "All right, cool." So within 2 weeks, I'm actually flew me down. I checked out the city, flew back, was writing thank you cards, put them in the UPS to hurry up and get down there just so they know that I didn't forget about them. Like, I want to be very gracious because they paid for me to come out. And then sure enough, right whenever I put them in the mail, our VP called me. He said, "Awesome, we want to offer you the job." So from there, I've been at the Saints. And then in 2019, we had a cross switch over to where now I'm actually working for the New Orleans Pelicans too, in the same space where I initially started my real true journey in the NFL in my career. So it's been, I know it's a long one. I know it's a quick elevator pitch as much as I can get in. Trust me, there's a lot more details that we'll go over, but that's really it, man.
Awesome. And, the first question we usually open up with is, what does your job look like? But just from that, 5 minutes there, I can tell, and I hope everybody can too, that you truly have a passion for what you do. So diving into that, why do the cliche out there is that you never work a day in your life if you truly love what you do. So why do you love what you do? I can see the passion, but why do you have that passion for your current role?
I mean, look, this game by itself, sports in general, teaches you so much about yourself. It teaches you character. It teaches you how to be humble. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you so much stuff to where it teaches you about life. And that's one of the things that I've always want to give back to. And I know a lot of players feel the same way. You want to empower the next generation. And that's one thing that I've always wanted to do. Whenever I first started out, I actually coached high school football for 2 years. I coached freshmen. And when, I was very tough on them. I was very tough. I was a very mean coach in the beginning, but I always cared about my players because I wanted them to, get the best out of it that they could. 3 years later, I'm at a gym in my local hometown where I coach, and I had a kid come up to me. He goes, "Are you Coach Pasco?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, like, what's up?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, what is this kid gonna say to me?" He was like, "My name is such and such, and I appreciate you because you were so hard on me. I am now grateful for that because I'm actually about to graduate and join the military because of the hard work that you put into me. That's my ultimate passion now." And I was like, dude, that hits hard because I went to the gym. I'm trying not to shed a tear in front of like all these guys lifting, but I'm like, that's the passion right there, man. Like, to invest into the next generation, that's what it's all about. To teach you about life character and everything like that. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you hit on a bunch of points there. This is the cool part of our job is when we get to talk to other people who kind of work in the same, umbrella that we do in youth and education and, promoting those values. We talk about those at the beginning, and, the game of football is so special because, it teaches all those, but just like everything else, you can use that in your everyday life. So, I said at the beginning, you're going to be surprised to see all these values keep popping up. And I think that's going to be true, as we move down the road here. So now kind of get into what you do now. Yeah, as we mentioned before, you got a really dynamic and unique role working for the Saints, but also working, for the NBA. You said here before we got on, you had calls with the NFL 1 hour, the NBA the other hour, trying to put on different hats, know who you're talking to, who you're talking about. So, a day-to-day life in the youth programs manager for the New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, man. It's funny how you say that too. It's one of those things where it was actually at the same hour. So I'm listening. I got one AirPod in, and I'm actually got it on my laptop, so where I'm listening to two different calls with both leagues. But look, it's one of those things on the Saints side. We definitely work with organizations like USA Football, reigning champs, who now oversees the NFL flag program. We've worked with you guys at the Hall of Fame. We've put on 7-7s down here in the city of New Orleans. We've worked with EverFi through their character playbook series as well. COVID's been a crazy time. So we did a 4-part series with them where, we're doing interviews, talking about different character skills with, Johnson Batamusi, Jameis Winston, Cam Jordan, and even a legend like Deuce McAllister. And then also too, there's the other side of it, right? Where we're going out and we're doing Coach of the Week. Very fortunate enough to do that this year. And then even to that, we do virtual every year. We normally go out and we do PE experiences with different schools all throughout the state, all throughout the Gulf Coast. And this year we had to go virtual. So it's one of those things, we're learning a different dynamic with that. And, same thing on the Pelican side, we're doing virtual experiences, just how we do with PE takeovers. It's a very great opportunity to where we could do that. And then even working with Junior NBA on their skills challenges. And then even we were trying to host an NBA regional tournament, and then COVID happened. So it's one of those things like, dang, we were going to host our first one ever, and then COVID. Like, it's not a fun time, but it's just one of those things you have to pivot to make new adjustments into your game plan.
And I guess, kind of going off of that, are there skills that you learned, whether it be in college or previous internships or opportunities or jobs that you can use in both of those? People think NFL, NBA are two totally separate things. But when you boil down to it, a lot of the same things you learn and use in one job, you can use in the other. So there's some things that stick out to you as skills that are transferable, between both the jobs.
Absolutely. One of the most things is hard work, determination. It's one of those things like there is no small task, even at an event. Like, shoot, going back to Octagon, I remember I was in Hialeah, Miami, in 102-degree heat, and we had to clean trash cans. You know what I mean? Through a water truck. So it's one of those things where there's no small task. So you have to be willing to put in hard work just to do something. And then also too, to that, attention to detail. That's a very, very, very hard thing. I think a lot of people, don't really look at sometimes, but not only do you have to have a plan A and a plan B, sometimes you got to go all the way down to like plan G, and you have to be able to make an audible, you know what I mean? Like, make an audible because there's a flag on play, or you have to pivot, or you have to cut when I should have went left, I should have went right. It's one of those things you have to adjust as much as possible. And then networking. It's literally trying to talk as many people as you can. Always have a smile on your face. Trust me, there's been times when I've been guilty where I've been frowning, but it's always having a smile on your face and having a positive attitude. Those are definitely things that I will always say that are a good thing to have in this industry.
Awesome. All right. Well, we got our first Facebook question. Nathan's out there. He told me he's got one. So we're going to throw it out to Nathan in our Gold Jacket Lounge in a different spot. But we wanted to make this as Saints themed as possible. So you're going to see a little bit of Saints theme in Nathan's background today.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much for sending it here. And Austin, thanks for joining us. And like he said, guys, I've kind of changed rooms. I'm back in the Gold Jacket Lounge, but I don't have the pictures of all of our guys behind us. I've got this jersey from Ricky Jackson, a helmet, class of 2010. I'm sure Austin appreciates that, working for the New Orleans Saints. But we did get our first question from Facebook. And before I ask that, I do have to encourage students that are watching, please submit your questions. Austin wants to hear your questions. Jake wants to hear your questions. I want to hear your questions because then I get to be on camera a little bit more. But the first question we have for you today, Austin, is from Sean. He's an MBA student actually at Jacksonville University. And first he says, I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan. That's what Sean says. And he wants to hear a little bit more about that internship you had working with Jim Kelly. How'd you get that connection? And then really the experience there, how you still use that and how it led to your other opportunities.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And Sean, thank you for asking it. So my connection to Jim Kelly is through networking again. Lo and behold, my family. He's actually, my father was actually the VP of sales for Classic Games back in the late 80s, early 90s. And Jim Kelly was actually one of the guys that we used to hang out with. My dad's originally from Buffalo, so it just fit, right? Mm-hmm. And I ended up always going to Jim's camp over the summer. Jim puts on a football camp over there in Orchard Park, and it's a phenomenal camp. And I ended up doing it. I ended up coaching at it. And then finally, like, it became time, in college, I'm like, man, I gotta get a name on my resume. I gotta do something. So I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, and I tried to, do it as not in professional as possible. I was like, hey, Jim, hope all is well, man. I really want to come and, do an internship for you if you have that opportunity, through your camp, through your foundation, whatever it may be. And he hit me back and he's like, hey man, sorry, we don't do that. It's one of those things where, it's not feasible for us right now. I'm like, okay, no worries. Like, hope to see you soon. Just took it with a grain of salt. Then Valentine's hit, which is actually his birthday. So I went a little bit of a different route where I'm like, hey, Uncle Jim, like, what's going on, man? Happy birthday. And then he texted me back. He's like, you know what? Pack your bags. I want you to come and do an internship for me this summer. So there, man, it was learning the other side of it, right? Like, I had been a camper. I had been a coach. Now I get to see the behind the scenes stuff. Like, it's one of those things, you're counting pennies in different colors and you're setting up cones, you're putting out the playbooks, for the coaches to teach the camp. And I mean, this is a camp that hosts maybe 1,000 kids each time. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. So it was a great opportunity to learn all that in an early stage of my career.
Yeah, I think that's awesome too. How, obviously it helped that you had a connection a little bit through the family, but even the resiliency to kind of hit him up again. And, and then he saw that and was like, you know what? We will put him to work. We'll get him some experience. And it sounds like it's really paid off for you. But like I said, students, submit those questions. That way Austin can answer those from you guys and hear from you and not just Jake. So Jake, we will send it back to you now though.
I thank you. I think, Nathan, no, yeah, great question. Again, I'll reiterate that. Make sure to get your questions in. Like I said, we can only ask them if you guys submit them. So we hope to see some more questions pop up on our Facebook feed here. So again, kind of diving back in, you gave us kind of your journey, that you went through all these different experiences to where you are today. So I want to kind of flash back to that high school Austin, who really is young, doesn't really have an idea on what he wants to do with his life. How did you ultimately end up picking a career in sports? Was it just because, you had that passion, or were there other careers you might have looked at? And then if somebody is in those same shoes in high school today, or even in college, what are some advices or some tips for them to kind of find that thing that they're best suited for?
Definitely. And that's a great question too. It was one of those things in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. It's one of those things where I thought I was going to become a fireman and be a part-time coach in high school. I really didn't know. And then luckily I had an opportunity to, get a scholarship through that. And then, hey, another plan that didn't work. I got to pivot. So I ended up just, finishing out my degree. And I remember I wanted a basic general business degree just to get into that. And then I'm like, man, like, I just don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm sitting on a couch with my roommate at the time and we're watching college football. And he's like, man, like, you love sports. Like, have you ever thought about doing sports management? And I'm like, what the heck is that? And then going back to it earlier, like, is that Jerry Maguire? Like, what am I doing here? Like, what is sports management? But I looked into it and it's one of those things where I'm like, hey, I can do this. Like, there's facilities, there's community relations, there's ticket sales, whatever it may be. But I mean, I'm grateful for that opportunity because now, like, I remember our first day of intro to sports management, somebody came in and they said, I want you to take a sticky note and I want you to write down what you want to be a career in. And I wrote down NFL weightlifting coach because I was a big meathead back then. But then I see, and like, granted, I'm not doing that now, but I am in the NFL and I am working in a space where I can help people, the younger youth, you know what I mean? So it's not always a straight road. There's going to be a lot of force. There's going to be a lot of dips and a lot of dives, but this is where I am now. And I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for that friend that like brought that up to me. Like, hey, have you ever thought of sports management? So it's a great journey, man. You never know. Little things like that will get you far in this industry.
I think that's a really cool story because that's totally true. It's those little things that have such a huge impact. Like I could see like you having that sticky note up at your desk. Like this was me when I first started and look to how far where I came today. And you mentioned a few times now about you wouldn't be where you are without networking. And we know how important networking is and how much it's stressed in college and even as young professionals to get out and network. But, you know, for me personally, it's something I wish I did a little bit better of. I was kind of the shy and reserved kid that, they don't want to talk to me. I'm just this little college sophomore. They don't want to talk to me. But so for somebody that might think that today, what are some tips and advice you would have, kind of break out of their comfort zone and truly start to build relationships and build their network?
Well, look, I'll say this. The one thing that I will say is network is key. I mean, I wish I could go into the whole nitty gritty of it all, but literally my network has gotten me to my next point in my career. And I'll say this in college, if you are in an intro to sports management class, or if you're in any kind of class, you need to be networking in your classes. That is your first network because those people, you never know. Those people could go and work for the Denver Broncos, or those people could go and work for the Cincinnati Reds, whatever it may be. That's your first network. So you need to reach out to them as much as possible each and every single day. Like hang out with different groups, hang out with different cultures, like just learn it all because those people are going to point you into a direction that you may not have thought you could get to. I'll say this, whenever, I interned for Jim Kelly, but I went to a career fair and I mean, in Atlanta, and there was different, I mean, look, you had the American Golf Association, you had 929, you had the Hawks, you had the Braves, you had Falcons, you had NASCAR, you had all these different people. And I ended up going to the Atlanta Hawks last. There's a line of 75 people in the line with 5 people from the Hawks trying to interview people. I hand my resume, and the first thing that happened with me is the guy said, Jim Kelly, how the heck did you get that? And I told him about it. The guy next to him was from Rochester, New York. And so he pulls him over. I'm talking to 2 people at once while there's 75 other people behind me trying to talk to at least one of these people. I'm talking to them for 35 minutes, and that helped me get my foot in the door into the Atlanta Hawks. There's nothing like that. You have to network in this industry and have to get to know the people, just not on a professional level, but on a personal level as well. You have to do that. You have to.
And I think that's super important because it's funny you mentioned that because even though for me, when I actually started here at the Hall of Fame, as well as Nathan, as interns in the youth and education department. So we work full time in the department we interned in. And that my professor at Ashland, the university I went to, told me the same thing. He's like, hey man, if even if you don't like the internship with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, if you go to the same thing and you give them a resume, they're going to look and see, oh, Pro Football Hall of Fame, that had to be cool. What did you get to do there? And even if it's truly a resume builder. Now, luckily for you, for me, that and Nathan too, that helped lead to a full-time job. And it just goes back to show how important it is even those networking points.
Even to add to that, Jake, it's one of those things. I remember my time at the Atlanta Braves was coming to an end. I ended up making an Excel sheet of 3 different categories: community relations, youth programs, and player engagement, all in the NFL. And I literally went through each team's website, pulled who was in that role, and I started reaching out. Now, granted, I went in the wrong kind of direction with them because I hit them up on LinkedIn or I hit them up on an email. And I was like, hey, my time's coming in with the Braves. I'm looking for a job. may not have been the best intro to where I should actually been like, hey, I'm actually interested in what you're trying to do. You know, do you have time to sit down and actually talk about this? Because it's one of those things where, going back to it, you need to get on a personal level with these people and just not hit them up for a job right away. You have to get on a personal level. But I mean, it's funny because I still have that spreadsheet, and we had our CR meetings here, our community relations meetings here in New Orleans last year. And somebody from the Eagles walked up to me and he was like, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "You reached out to me and asked me for a job, and I told you I would keep your resume on file. And now I see that you're the manager of the New Orleans Saints, and I'm so proud of you." Like that kind of stuff. I was like, dang, at least I networked the right way about it. But it's a cool little opportunity, right? So it's all about networking, guys. That's the one thing I will tell you.
And I think it's important too, that networking is important in any field, but I think the sports industry specifically, it might be one of the most important things, if not the most important, when it comes to trying to find a career in sports. You know, we've talked a lot about your job today. We've mentioned some guys like Jim Kelly. You know, Nathan's in front of that Ricky Jackson jersey. And, you know, our job here at the Hall of Fame is to preserve the history of all those greats like Ricky Jackson and Jim Kelly. And, you know, I don't have a vote, but I'm pretty sure that Drew Brees is going to have his own place in here in 5 or so years. But with that being said, what I like to do is I'm actually going to send it out live to our museum, to the Director of Youth and Education, the guy who actually gave Nathan and I both jobs here at the Hall of Fame, Jerry Shockey, who's in front of some artifacts we have on display from your New Orleans Saints.
All right. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you, Austin, for I appreciate the enthusiasm and just, man, you got me pumped up on this end too. So, and I can only imagine those folks that are tuned in here today that are watching this, high school, college, and beyond, for this Before the Snap series. And so I'm here actually in our Pro Football Today gallery, where we feature some of the stars from the game today and highlight record-breaking achievements from recent seasons in the National Football League. And so we've got two behind me. We could say, let's see, we got Boom and Zoom behind me. And so Zoom is still there, Boom is not. But these are some pretty cool artifacts, because back in 2017, week 16 against the Atlanta Falcons, they actually, as you can read through the display here, they tied 1,400 yards from scrimmage in the same season. They were the first duo to do that since 1985, with our very own here in Northeast Ohio, that is very well known, Kevin Mack and Ernest Biner. So, and we also have footballs from both of these guys from that particular season as well. And if you were to look over to my left, you would actually see two other pretty significant artifacts here. Is that number one, this past season, Drew Brees broke the career attempt mark. We have that football on display here. And then right below that, Saints fans might know, a guy by the name of Alvin Kamara actually tied an NFL record for 6 touchdowns. There were 3 other guys that had done that, 2 of which are Hall of Famers, Hall of Famer Ernie Nevers and Hall of Famer Gale Sayers. And so, you know, I think about this and being here, I've actually been here for 21 years now at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I've got to work a lot with our guys and get these guys going out in the community, doing programs. And again, as I heard you saying earlier, is using football as a platform or as a metaphor to teach valuable life lessons. And so it's an awesome opportunity and responsibility that we have in our department to do that. So let me know, how do you get some of your players out in the community, and what kind of relationship do you have with them and getting them out in the community with your job there?
Absolutely. And Jerry, man, I'm kind of jealous that you're standing there right now, because it's one of those things, like, granted, I'm very fortunate. I got to be at that 6-game touchdown that Alvin Kamara had. So very grateful for that. But man, so much history there. And going back to your question, it's one of those things where, you know, we have guys that want to be in the community. Cameron Jordan is one of those guys. Every Tuesday, even virtually, he's still trying to be in the community. His dad played, and he sees how much of an impact that has. There's a lot of guys too that, you know, they want to instill in the youth into the next generation, because they have their own story and they want their story heard, and they want other people to be pulled into that, because it's one of those things where, hey, I grew up on this side of town, but look at me, I'm in the NFL. Or it's like, come on, man, like, I know you're going through a hard time, but look, you can push through it. It's just literally having a hand on your shoulder and telling you you can get through whatever you need to get through. I still remember this day. Coy Wire came to Jim Kelly's football camp, and I remember hearing his passion while he was giving us a chalk talk at camp. Very fortunate enough, like, I've met Coy a couple of times, and it's one of those things where it's like, wow, man, I idolized you. You know what I mean? Like, you were so cool, and every word that you said, I respect the heck out of you. And I'm here now because of your passion I saw whenever I was 12 years old. So it's one of those things where they are very good at giving back to the community and taking the time to get to know the community as well.
And Austin, do you mind if I highlight on that? You touched on the Tuesdays, and so that's typically referred to as CR Day. Some teams now are Mondays as well. I know the Browns, I think Jenner at the Browns, I think they do Mondays, but you talk about that. What is CR Day in the NFL world?
So CR Day is really like the off day where the guys can just chill out. It's kind of one of those things where, hey, coach may call an audible and he might mix it up because of a game plan or something along those kind of lines. But it's a day where the guys can just relax and just recharge. Look, they work 6 days a week, basically. Sometimes they work the full 7 because they work basically a 12-hour day. Like, I know guys get to the facility, they're studying their playbook at 5 a.m. They're hitting a quick weight. They're doing walkthroughs. They're studying game film. They literally have a tough day. So it's like it's a 5 to 9 job for a lot of these guys. So those off days are an opportunity for them just to mellow out, recharge. But a lot of them want to be in the community. They want to make an impact. They like, you know what? I want to go talk to a high school about, literacy, or I want to go talk to, I want to go have some fun at an elementary school and just bring a smile to a kid's face, right? It's just one of those days where they can recharge mentally because, hey, at the end of the day, they're just like me and you. They just play every single Sunday. That's about it.
Well, thank you, Austin. I appreciate the great insight here today, and I'm going to send it back to Jake.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for showing us those great artifacts out in pro football today. And you talk about that CR Day and being involved in the community that way. And, one of the benefits of working in sports is you get to be a part of some very cool things that people would pay absurd amount of money, to be in your shoes. So you look at being a part of all those community events. You mentioned the 6 touchdown game in your short time with the Saints. And we can actually extend this to your time in any career, in the sports field. Is there a moment that stands out to you as the coolest that makes you go, hey, I was there. I was a part of that. What is that moment for you?
Oh, there's so many, man. I mean, look, as you guys are hearing, I've been in the NBA, I've been in the NFL, I've been in the MLB. So it's just so tough to like make one decision. But I will say this with the New Orleans Saints, and COVID's been a tough time, man. It's really hit a tough time with everyone. This year, at least, I will say my best opportunity that I had is something that we take pride in is our Coach of the Week program. And it's where we actually go out to different schools within the New Orleans area, and we highlight a coach that's actually, hey, he's winning on the field, but he's also winning outside the field with his guys. He's teaching them all these, character things that I keep talking about. So that's one program for sure. We also did a $5,000 equipment donation to a school over in Mississippi through one of our partners. And that was really cool, man, to see those kids light up, getting $5,000 worth of brand new practice equipment. And they ended up making it to a little bit further than they ever made in playoffs. Granted, they didn't go all the way, but it was one of those things where you get to see that initial reaction, right? Where it's like, dang, the Saints care and their partners care. They're actually out in the community doing as much as possible. So that's really, man, that's really it. There's so many other opportunities I want to talk about, but it's at the end of the day, there's so many memories, there's so many great things in this industry. So definitely count your blessings whenever you are working in this industry.
Absolutely. I can echo that 100% for sure. Just heard from Nathan. We've got questions rolling in now. I know he's got a few he wants to ask. So we're going to throw it back to our Gold Jacket Lounge for some Facebook questions there from Nathan.
Yeah. So the first question we got coming off Facebook's from a high school here in Ohio, Jefferson County Christian. And they said, what's something that you think you could have done differently in your career? You talked about all your different experience. Like, is there something you're like, yeah, maybe I took the wrong route with that? You kind of talked about when you sent out and you said, hey, I want a job before you had the relationships, maybe that, or maybe something else.
Jefferson Christian, thank you guys so much for the question. Look, there's a lot of learning moments in this industry. I will say that. I remember one time I was working for an organization in Atlanta, and we actually did a mom's clinic down in South Georgia, which is about 4 hours away from our facility. It's about 2 hours away from my hometown. And we were doing a mom's clinic, and catering went well, everything's going well, but they didn't have the right kind of internet connection. And we normally played a hype video, right? And it's one of those things where the hype video was lagging. The sound was lagging on it. So finally, I'm working for 45 minutes on this, trying to get it right. And finally got it right. My supervisor at the time, she came up to me and she goes, "Is it going to play right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." She goes, "Will you put your job on it?" And it's one of those things where I'm like, "Ooh." I'm like, "Yeah, like, yes, it's going to play right." Unfortunately, it didn't play right. So it's one of those things where it's like, dang. And she gave me a look like, gosh, I'm probably gonna be fired after this. It's about a 5-hour walk home. I need to call my mom. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's a teachable moment. That's where I'm like trying to get at. It's a teachable moment where, look, I could have sat there, I could have sulked, I could have, given up right then and there. But look, the equipment still, because we would take them out on the field. And gosh, I think it rained that day. So we had to go in the gym. So I had to move all of the equipment from the field to the gym. I still had to do Twitter posts. I still had to do Instagram posts. It's so much more that I had to do, but it was a teachable moment because our director came up to me and he was like, "Look, I'm proud of you." And I'm like, "Dude, I just messed up. Like, the video didn't play." He's like, "No, but I'm proud of you because here's the thing. You showed me your character because you kept pushing forward and you kept doing your job that you needed to do. And look, maybe 5 people will remember that, but the rest 145 that are here, they're having a heck of a time." So it's a teachable moment where you can give up. Like, it's it's one of those things where it stunk that, yeah, the video didn't play, but it's those moments where you have to appreciate them because it tests you through character. Like I said, it's a flag on the play. You got to make an audible. You got to pivot. And, lo and behold, if those 5 people did have a bad time, you could pull them aside and say, "How can I make your experience that much better? How can I do that?" So those are the life lessons that I've learned to make myself that much better at what I do.
Yeah, I love that, and how you talked about you kind of just had to keep grinding. You couldn't just, sulk and complain and be like, "Well, I screwed up." Well, forget the rest of the day or the rest of the event. You were able to persevere because of your character and make a great experience for everybody else. So this question I'm going to read off Facebook, so I'm not going to have that good, eye contact with the camera because it's such a long question. This is from Ame. She's graduating with a bachelor in statistics from the University of South Carolina. Says she was born in New Orleans, huge Saints fan. So I'm gonna put that caveat in there. And she's been looking with her statistics degree into like next gen stats competitions like the Big Data Bowl and other opportunities with operations, especially with the Saints. But she's having a hard time finding undergraduate opportunities. So who in the NFL world, who would you recommend the types of people that she should reach out to if she's thinking about this statistics, data, what do you got for us, Austin?
That's a tough one because I'm not really an analytics guy, but it's something that's growing in this profession. I will say that we definitely have our business intelligence department that analyzes every little thing. So I would definitely say look into data analytics. GRM is another good one too, CRM is another one too. You need to just try and network as much as possible. And that's the best answer I can give you right now. Just network as best as possible. So that's all I can say to you.
No, that's fair. I mean, network as best as possible. You kind of gave some of the career paths that maybe would work well with her major. And that's really what we're here to do on Before the Snap, is to encourage students to take that opportunity to network. So I got a couple more. Hopefully we'll get back to me at least one more time for some questions, but I know Jake got some questions, so I'm going to send it back to him.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Nathan, and Austin as well. And thank you for everybody who's submitting their questions. I know we might be able to get to at least one, maybe 2 more before we wrap up today. But I want to kind of jump back into your career. We obviously talked about working for the Saints, working for the Pelicans, and there's highs and lows in both of that. You mentioned, teams do well, teams don't do well, teams got great players, teams don't have some good players. So you look at the Saints, guys like, you had the big 3 and I'm probably going to offend people, but you got Drew Brees, Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and then the list goes on. You got all the great defensive players, Cam Jordan. I'm going to mention Malcolm Jenkins just because, I'm a Buckeyes guy. Marshawn Lattimore on the edge. I keep going, but all these great football players, but, I'm going to kind of pivot. I know that we're the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but I want to look at, the basketball side of things. And the announcement when it was made that the Pelicans got the first overall pick, almost solidifying them that Zion Williamson was going to be a Pelican. You saw the viral video of the entire room jumping up and cheering. What was the office like the next day after the draft special that night?
Oh man, I wish I would have been in that video. Jake, like you said, man, that video went viral. That's a lot of our ticket people. That's a lot of people in our group sales and people all over in the organization. So I'm kind of jealous that they got to be there for that moment. But hey, I was at home too. I'm like, yes, we got the #1 pick. Let's make sure we get Zion. Like, let's go. But it was one of those things, man, where it was a great opportunity, to get him and, see the city really come together even more, securing hopefully Zion before we even made the pick. But I find it funny because somebody else in our department, him and I actually went to Chicago for our junior NBA meetings right after we got the #1 pick. And I have teams coming up to me left and right. Like, you got New York, you got Atlanta, you had Chicago, you got LA, and they're all like jealous. They're like, so Zion, huh? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I have no insight. Like, yes, we have the #1 pick, but I can't tell you what we're going to do. But to see the city on that day, on draft day, we actually went right downtown. We had a big event, everything like that for the draft. And to see the fans and to hear the cheers and everything like that, man, to hear that we got Zion Williamson was one of the coolest things in the world. It's a great opportunity that we got to do that. Look, they're balling as hard as they can right now. Definitely grateful for all that. They're hardworking. Trust me, they're on there every single day playing the best that they can. So hopefully, man, we'll hopefully see a championship here sometime soon.
And kind of pivoting off of that, we asked the question about, when the football team, when we've done, programs like this before, when the football team succeeds, does the football side is all happy, and the organization, does the organization as a whole see that? Do you see that between the Pelicans and the Saints? So say, you said the entire city of New Orleans, was pumped. So that has to leak into the football side, the Saints side of things too. But does it work back and forth? If the Saints succeed, are the Pelicans, employees happy? If the Pelicans are out there winning, are the Saints employees happy? Like, how does that dynamic work? And do you see any bleed over from both of those organizations?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things too, is like, our organization is definitely very unique. A lot of people work on both sides, the Saints and the Pelicans. So there is that like camaraderie, in a sense too. We do keep it separate, but there is like a little bit of times where, and of course we do mesh together. It's one of those things where, I remember whenever, back before COVID, whenever Zion and everyone got here too, they all came to a Saints game. And then also too, you see a lot of our Saints players, they love going to Pelicans game. They love trying to support each other as much as possible. Because, hey, at the end of the day, like, our facilities are literally right across the street from each other, like in the same kind of complex. So it's cool to see that camaraderie, even though it's two different sports, they're playing together and they're making those connections together. So it's really cool seeing that.
Awesome. Facebook questions seem to be flooding in now. Nathan's got a few more, so we're going to throw it back out to him for some more questions from our Facebook audience.
Yeah, so the first one I got for you is from Joe, and Joe just wants to know, what was your biggest takeaway from your time at Octagon?
Hey, man, Joe, great question, man. It's one of those things. Octagon was a cool experience. I mean, look, we're going to 7 different cities in the United States over a 7-month time frame, and we're spending 2 weeks there. So not only are you working, but you're also getting to see the different, you're getting to see the country in a sense too, right? You're getting to see where you could potentially live in a sense. But with Octagon, it's hard work too, man. Like, they're very, very detailed. It's one of those things, like, those are cars. Like, you are trying to get people to drive these cars, enjoy the ultimate driving experience. And at the end of the day, trying to buy a BMW, right? So it's trying to drive that up. And it was a cool experience getting to see all that. And, hey, I love driving the cars myself. There was a lot of times we got to take them around on a hot lap or anything like that. Got to drive an I-8 where it's electric. So it's zooming right out. So it's really cool, man. But it's you get to know these people. When I go back to this, and I hope you guys are taking this away, is your network is so important, because there's at least 10 people out of 20 people. I know that's half, but that I still talk to on a regular basis, to where I'm still connecting with them. I'm still checking in with them. We're having FaceTimes and whenever, we're hanging out and just thinking of one another. But it's building like that. They're your family in a sense too. It's just not your network, it's your family. So you need to try and build that as much as possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then how you talked about your network becomes even more than just a professional relationship at times. The longer you're with an organization, it can really feel like, your family. I got another really good question from another student at the University of South Carolina, Keely. She's a business major with a nonprofit minor. And she says, what kind of experience does a community relations department look for when they're looking at applicants? Is there something she should prioritize, or, as she's trying to gain experience? And then, do you think it's better for them to expand their resume into their cover letter? Or excuse me, let me read that again. In the cover letter, I want to make sure I get this question, do it correctly. In the cover letter, is it more important for them to talk about their experience, or is it more important to talk about who they are as a person? So first, what kind of experience are you looking for in community relations? And then a little bit resume cover letter advice that you might have.
Good stuff. Definitely volunteering is definitely a key component to that. And that's one thing too, is, you want to show that you've worked for nonprofits. You want to show that you've given back to a community in those kind of sense, to where, you can do tasks. You can work with local food banks. You can work with, different missions, whatever it may be, different schools, foundations, along those kind of lines. So I think that's a good opportunity to volunteer as much as possible. And then also too, like, look, there's some times where, hey, you might dip your toe into youth programs, or, hey, you might go into corporate partnership. If you're learning the business from different angles, that's one thing I will say is, you don't need to be necessarily just keyed in on one thing, but at the same time, you need to like show that you are passionate about a certain thing. Look, trust me, in my career, I've had plenty of opportunities to give up. I've had buddies hit me up about construction jobs, or, selling insurance. Why are you still chasing this dream? It's just like, dude, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And if your passion is giving back to the community and going through, giving back to different areas, then you need to kind of focus on that too. I know I'm saying learn other organizations of the business, other sides of the business, but learn, like, key in on that and learn more foundation stuff. And then the second part of the question was, one more time, Nathan?
It was just about, your cover letter. So in my cover letter, should I try to highlight all the experiences that I've got, or should I use that as an opportunity to sell them as who I am as a person?
Great. Yeah. So definitely talk about your experiences. That's one thing I will say. Look, even if you were a student athlete, definitely let me know about that, because that's one thing that I want sometimes when hiring somebody, because they have drive. Not to discourage anybody, but it's one of those things, like, if you tell me that you played a sport, and we can do that on a phone call, like, you can tell me that you played a sport, but that's ultimately, at the end of the day, like, I want somebody that has been through different situations. But look, it's great. It's grind. Like, I want to hear those stories. Granted, your resume doesn't necessarily need to show that, but definitely throw that in. Like, sprinkle a little bit of stuff in there. You need to show that in your resume.
Yeah. And then I guess I would even follow up on 2 points that you've made. First, I'm sure you get a stack of resumes anytime you guys post an internship or something. And, like, what makes you keep someone and kind of put them in the pile that, like, hey, we need to reach back out to this person, set up an interview, versus putting them in the pile that, not right now, they don't seem like a good fit?
Going back to it, I think it comes back to just experience too. I want to see what you've done. I want to see, different takes that you've had in life. I want to see, hey, can you handle, putting together a spreadsheet of multiple, nonprofits or youth program coaches all throughout the state? I want to see little details as much as possible, because that's how I know that you can grind. Look, you can tell me on the story as far as, you've picked up trash, you've done this, you've done that, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I go back to it, your network. Whoever was your past boss, I'm going to call that person and I'm going to ask them, what do you know about this person? Give me a 5-minute spiel about them. And then I want the highs and I want the lows. Like, are they going to sit there and sulk at the end of the day? Or, like, whenever, something doesn't go their way, or are they just going to nonstop be a grinder at the end of the day? Those are the things that I want to hear, not only from you, but I want to hear them from your past experiences and your past supervisors.
Yeah. And then the last thing I got for you, and I'll send it back to Jake after this, is, you mentioned in your own experience that you were writing thank you notes. And I don't know if we've touched on that in before the snap, but why was that important for you when you were kind of internship here, maybe a full-time job here? You talked about you were putting the thank you note into the mail when the Saints called you, but, like, why was that something important to you? And I'm sure it still means something to you now to get one.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, believe it or not, I'm going to give them credit, even though they're our arch rivals. I give it credit to the Atlanta Falcons. They taught me that while I was there. It's a thing that I learned after events. We would actually write handwritten letters to players and include a couple of pictures of them at the event, because, hey, is the player going to read this? Yes or no? Like, really don't know. But at the end of the day, like, it's just a thought that counts. Now, I'll say this, for a job interview, it's one thing to sit down and type an email. It's one thing to do that. That's great. I'm not discrediting that whatsoever, but a handwritten note, and you're hitting the touch points of just not a generic, like, thank you for bringing me in. No, like, I remember in mind, I wrote our VP, thank you for taking the time to fly me out to New Orleans. Thank you for showing me the city. And I threw in a little bit of a memory that him and I share that I still laugh about to this day. But it's, hey, I can do this job, but also to thank you for at least inviting me out. Thank you for showing me the city, and, just making it personable, because at the end of the day, you have to work with these people nonstop. Like, this is like, if you're trying to get an internship, look at it this way too. This is picking your college for the next, month or a year, however long that internship. Whatever they value, that's what you're going to learn. That's what they're going to teach you. So you need to, like, kind of do your research with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. It's advice that I've heard. I try to remember anytime, I've had to look for internships or a full-time job. I know Jake's a big advocate of it. And I really appreciate the time you've taken with us, Austin. I know Jake has probably a question or two to wrap things up, but thank you so much. And I'm going to send it back to Jake.
All right. Thanks, Nathan. Yes. And I will echo that 1,000%. A huge fan of the handwritten thank you note. And it just doesn't need to be for an interview. Like you said, an event. If you're a volunteer and you get the experience in that, there are so many ways and that does mean something. I can tell you, in my desk right now, I have a pile of thank you notes that are from staff members, former interns, people we've worked with out in the community that I truly take to heart, because it does show that there was more than just that, hey, we showed up to an event, or hey, we interviewed you. That does show that very important connection. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I am a huge fan of that for sure. Last question here. And if you've seen, you said you studied the game film, then you know the question that's coming. The last question we like to ask in this program, because there's so many little nuggets of information throughout that I hope everybody watching out there was taking notes. I was jotting down some notes over here myself. But if you can sum everything up we've talked about today and give everybody watching, Nathan and I even, that one last piece of advice, what would your one piece of advice be?
Whew, my last piece of advice. So I'm gonna go with this. So this is something I learned at Tampa Bay, and it's one of those things. There's the 4 P's, right, of marketing, where it's product, promotion, place, and price. One of the 4 things that we taught our players off the field and a lot of the rookies was the other 4 P's, and that's the purpose, the process, the pause, and the professionalism. And that, to me, will get you so far in this career. Those are the 4 P's where you got to know what's your why, right? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to pursue this? And then you got to trust the process. Trust me, I've heard it countless times. It's all about timing. Timing was never my fan in my early stages. So you have to trust that. And then pause. So the next thing I'll say this, remember your social media. You need to be very, very careful on your social media, because that is one thing that organizations are definitely going to look at whenever you're posting on social media. So look, there's a phone out there no matter where you are. So you need to watch every single thing that you do. You need to watch what you post. You think there's an erase button, there's really not. So you need to watch that. And then your professionalism, carry yourself, look, there's different in my profession. There's different times where I've had to talk to kids. I've had to talk to a partner. I've had to talk to a player. I've had to talk to parents all at once. And there's different ways to talk to them and how to carry yourself. Like, look, with a little kid, I can be as goofy as I want to be. With a parent, I need to be like, hey, like, this is how it goes. And then with a partner, it's like, man, we got this. And then with a player, you got to, like, a little bit of both, you know what I mean? You got to mix it up with them. So those are like the 4 P's that I would definitely say that you need to take into account whenever you're in the industry, and how you carry yourself. Always smile, never get down on yourself. At the end of the day, if you want to be in this profession, you have to just smile. And look, there's tough days. Trust me, I've had tough days, but there's grind to it. And you just really remember, you are in the professional sports industry. And I say professional, but also too, remember, there's college, there's high school, there's Parks and Rec. You need to remember that. So always, always, always remember your network, smile, and remember the 4 P's.
Awesome. Well, if we're going to wrap things up, I could add one more P to that just from this program alone. It's passion, because you definitely got it. And I hope everybody watching is able to see that as well. And I think that when that passion follows that career, that end result is always going to be great. So with that, we're going to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fames Before the Snap series today, featuring our special guest, Austin Pasco from the New Orleans Saints. Again, Austin, thank you so much for giving some of your time today to teach that next generation. I know I wish it's something I could have watched when I was in school. So we definitely appreciate you giving your time and everything you do for the game and everything you do for us indirectly here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And before we leave everybody today, just another quick reminder. I know it's March Madness. I know basketball's on the front of everybody's mind right now, but we are still coming out with a lot of great stuff here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So if you don't already follow, like, subscribe, whatever you have to do on a social media account for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, do it. You're going to see a lot of great things that we continue to push out. And I'll even say the Saints and the Pelicans as well. I'll give them a little bit of pub as well. Make sure you follow, like, stay up to date with all the great news coming out here from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you're a podcast listener, hit that subscribe button on podcasts. We got a great one here called The Mission, hosted by our great coworker and friend here at the Hall of Fame, Jameer Howerton. And also, if you see this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube as well and stay up to date with all the great video content that we're putting out here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Next week, March 26th, we are not, is that next week? Next week? Yeah, next week is March 26th. We have special guest Annie Agar, and you might not know the name, but I guarantee you've probably watched one of her videos on Twitter or TikTok. If you've seen the awkward Zoom calls between Big Ten teams or maybe some NFL playoff teams, or maybe you've seen it on ESPN, that's who we're going to be interviewing. We're going to be interviewing Annie Agar next week. Now, before we wrap up, any closing remarks here from Austin?
Hey, Jake, Nathan, I appreciate you guys' time. But also, too, I want to give a quick shout out to my department, our director of relationship, Bashar Sheridan, Adam Fournier, our coordinator, and Janicia Neely, our associate. Without those people, I wouldn't be able to do my job. So I appreciate them. I appreciate you guys. And hey, if you guys ever need anything, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Make sure you include a message. Just don't randomly add me. Don't hit me up for a job, but just make sure that you send a message, and I'll be sure to get back to you guys as soon as possible. So thank you guys once again for your time.
And again, Austin, thank you. We know the game of football isn't just the game you see on Sunday or, heck, last NFL season, every day of the week throughout the season. It's a 365-day job to make that final product on game day as best it can be. So again, thank you so much for being a part. Thank you everything you do for the game of football. And for everybody out there watching, thank you so much for tuning in. And we hope you see you next week right here on the Pro Football Hall of Fame Facebook page for Before the Snap. Thank you, everybody.